Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 28th of July, 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. It's raining, it's grey, it's certainly not July and summer. We'll leave it at that. But good news in Scotland, or is it, Mike, over the named person scheme?
Well, it depends on your point of view. So the BBC's headline said Scottish government, is quoting the Supreme Court saying the Scottish government wants Scotland to be the best place in the world for children to grow up. I mean,
the Doherty case proves that, Mike, without any trouble at all.
Absolutely, but if you actually go and look at the full judgment, which is or the announcement of the judgment, which is on the Supreme Court YouTube channel, here are the three Supreme Court judges who offered their verdict. And what did they have to say? Well, they said that the only option open to the court is to rule that the information sharing powers, that aspect of the case, were not within the legislative competence of the Scottish Parliament. So, in other words, what the Scottish Parliament did was unlawful. And they went on to say that they would then make an order to allow the Scottish Parliament, I believe, 42 days. The opportunity to correct the defect which they have identified. Now, we're going to discuss this in much more detail tomorrow with David Scott, but what this appears to mean is that effectively the Supreme Court has struck down the legislation, the Act of Parliament, which enables the named person scheme, because what they're saying is that this aspect of it is unlawful, and so the point is that the only option that the Scottish Parliament has at this point in time is to amend the legislation, which of course they're very unlikely to be able to do within a 40-day time frame.
But I understand that some parties in the Scottish Government are crowing that they've actually got a victory from this. So
sounds like they seem to think it was an easy ride for them. So there's clearly still some discussion to have, but we'll be getting the full details from David tomorrow.
Okay, well, we'll watch that one. I'll just say, isn't it nice to see men and women dressed sensibly within the court system? I've got to say that. They're wearing their suits and appropriate attire, no wigs or anything relating to ancient customs. That's about as polite as I can put that. Well, interesting that Ms. Goddard is back in the news, and a number of the papers picking up on the fact that the Goddard child abuse inquiry has now spent a mere £18 million, but has not taken a single word of evidence from child abuse survivors. So this is remarkable stuff. We've got Goddard on her chairman's salary of £360,000 plus £110,000 a year rental support she gets, and she's now saying she's going to take 5 years, but other people involved with the inquiry are saying this is going to go to 10 years. But if you're on that sort of gravy train, Mike, presumably that decision of 10 years is interesting. This is fascinating. Apparently Goddard says that the key investigation within her inquiry is Lord Janner. So as we'll see in a minute, they're getting a lot of other information coming forward, but apparently it's Lord Janner. Have we been unkind to Lord Janner? And there's a truth project proposed within her inquiry where victim statements are going to be made, but of course those are all going to be made in secret. So those can be nicely packaged up and swept away under the carpet without any trouble. Interesting to see Daily Mail reporting that she was ranked 63rd of 63 New Zealand judges. Now, UK Column and other media outlets were reporting this some time ago. Daily Mail catching up on the reality of the poor performance of this woman. And here we are, 100 new allegations a week, and 25% of those apparently are being put back to the police, which will be useful because the police can then fail to investigate or cover them up. Nice little circular arrangement going on here, Mike.
So this is Chilcot on steroids then?
Chilcot on steroids, yeah. So if we have a look at that in the bigger picture sense, we'll bring Goddard back in centre screen. There she is. She looks a bit concerned how she's going to spend that £470,000 a year. I expect she'll make it. Now, she's got a friend unleashed in Scotland because, of course, Ms O'Brien recently stepped down as chair of the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry because she said the Scottish government was interfering with the inquiry. So what's happened in Scotland? We've selected another reliable, independent judge. Few questions about her performance, but we'll talk about that another time. And we just remind people, of course, this is Scotland, where if you report paedophiles, the state responds by taking your children away. And we're very interested that clearly there are members of Police Scotland who are deeply unhappy with what has happened to the Doherty family. Wall of silence there I've put in by the Scottish government. Remember, for Goddard, she is not interested in talking to key people like Melanie Shaw, whose testimony then expanded to 8 or 9 children's home. We don't want Melanie anywhere near this inquiry. We prefer to have her where she is, which is in solitary confinement, back in prison.
Where she can't speak to anybody?
Can't speak to anybody, can't receive mail, can't get her telephone calls through. So clearly she's not going to be any damage to the British establishment. And then we'll add to that by bringing in our very brave Met Police whistleblower. And if you haven't heard this interview, it's available on the front page of the UK Column website. And this man really takes the lid off the whole system because he exposes the fact that the police, politicians, Westminster, the establishment have known about the true industrial scale of abuse of children for decades, and what they have consistently done is covered up, protected those involved in it, and of course they have harassed and bullied the whistleblowers coming forward. Please listen to the interview, and I'll also say to those of you who have listened to the interview with that extremely courageous Metropolitan Police officer, he needs your help. If you've heard the interview and you haven't written an email, you haven't picked up the telephone, or you haven't written a letter to Theresa May as Prime Minister, or your Member of Parliament, or the Minister for Policing, then you are not supporting this policeman. We should have tens of thousands of members of the public standing up to put their weight behind this very brave individual, because it's only the exposure coming from inside these organisations which is going to fully expose the criminal elite which are running the country. And
completely agree with that. Can I just add that, of course, sharing this on Facebook is not enough. You've got to take the action that Brian's talking about. But if you haven't shared it on Facebook, if you've only liked it on Facebook, then of course that doesn't distribute the video. You've got to share it in order for your friends to see it. So please do that at the very least.
Please do that. And as always, your language in any communication needs to be polite, reasonable, but very firm. You're not going to be fobbed off by a wall of silence. Questions need to be asked, and you need to get your support in behind this man. If we support these very, very brave people coming forward, more are going to come forward, and then we are going to start to bring this corrupt criminal house of cards down before they start World War III.
Which brings us to Operation Steppe Eagle. This is it's a NATO exercise. It's a peacekeeping exercise, of course, an international peacekeeping exercise. And this is the second stage, which has been taking place in the United Kingdom. The first stage took place in Kazakhstan at the Illiski Training Center. This one is taking place at the Stanford Training Center, and it has brought together military experts from Kazakhstan, the UK, the United States, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. And it has proven apparently to be an efficient tool of development of the Kazakhstan Armed Forces and its peacekeeping potential. And they are also being complemented by other nations such as Turkey, Germany, and France. And the exercise helps to upgrade the professional level of Kazakhstan peacekeepers. So that's got to be good.
Well, I don't think so at all, Mike. I think it's extremely dangerous. This is the internationalist military policy that we've been hearing about. David Cameron putting this together in the background. But what's really going on here is we've got City of London, Britain, combined with the Americans now starting to train up mercenary forces, because these are going to be overseas armies that are going to be used to do the bidding of the criminal cartel in the US and the UK. So it's pretty easy to see this picture coming together.
Yeah.
And we can add to it because thank you very much to the person in Holland that alerted us to this Breitbart article. This is from the beginning of the year. We missed it originally. Sweden's army chief warns of World War III inside Europe within a few years. And he told his troops, this is General Anders Brandstrom, he said to his troops, expect to be fighting a war in Europe against skilled opponents within a few years. And one of the key statements he made is the global environment we are experiencing, which is also demonstrated by strategic decisions taken by politicians, leads us to the conclusion we could be at war within a few years. So this man's pretty sure he knows what he's looking at, and of course he's directly pointing a finger at the politicians. So let's bring in a British admiral. Here he is, Rear Admiral Chris Parry, and the same source said to us, you need to read these two articles together, and the person is absolutely right. So we've got Rear Admiral Chris Parry, CBE, and his amazing crystal ball, Mike. Because he was warning that there was the potential for Islamist raids on European islands. And we'll have a look at this. He apparently warned in a government paper in 1990. Now, that's the date given. I'm going to accept it, but nevertheless, we know that he's made statements. I'm just a little bit suspicious about that actual date. He said Islam would replace communism as the main threat against the West. And he accurately predicted the collapse of African and Arab nations during the so-called Arab Spring. And it gets better because we'll put this in. The security situation in the Mediterranean will continue to deteriorate to the point where we can expect Islamist raids on European islands. So
how would he know that, Brian?
How would this man know that? Well, I decided to do a little bit of research. And it's very interesting what then comes up. Let's bring in this one, because this is the department he's been heading up, or was originally heading up, the Department for Concepts and Doctrine Centre. Now, don't worry, because this is independent. It's totally independent.
Why does it have Ministry of Defence at the top then?
Don't worry about that. Don't let that confuse the situation, because this document clearly says that this organisation is independent.
Okay.
And it says then we're a joint multinational establishment with staff drawn from all three services, the civil service and our partner nations. So it's independent. We work routinely with NATO, the European Union, the United Nations, and a global network including other government departments, non-governmental organisations and industry. So they seem to work with everybody, Mike, and they are predicting the future with amazing accuracy. So let's just bring in this bit here. They've got plenty of money for graphics. Is this a movie or is this the Ministry of Defence? Well, it's both. And if we have a look at this document, there's some fascinating information. We only need one piece, which is this. Beyond its work within the mod, the Futures team also contributes to cross-government thinking about the future and works closely with international partners.
I'm sorry, you're confusing me.
But it is independent.
Yes.
So what we really need to say is, did those international partners collaborate to create the very future they predicted?
Do we create our own reality, Brian?
I think we do.
Yes.
So a rear admiral who sat down with a blank piece of paper and predicted the Arab Spring, the rise of Islam, the fall of communism, the rise of Islam, not a chance, absolutely not a chance. What we've got here is international collaboration to create the very situation which we're now experiencing. And of course, with, amongst others, a Swedish general saying, if this continues, we're heading to war.
Well,
yes, pretty obvious.
Somebody else who's wanting to create their own reality is Anatoly Kaletsky. Here he is. He is the chief economist and co-chairman of Gavekel Dragonomics, whatever that is. He's a former columnist at the Times of London, International New York Times, and the Financial Times, and he's written some books. But he, of course, is talking about how we can reverse Brexit. And he's saying, he's asking, how could the European Union respond to the narrow decision by voters in the United Kingdom to leave? European leaders are now focusing rightly on how to prevent other countries from leaving the EU or the euro. The most important country to be kept in the club is Italy, which faces a referendum in October that could pave the way for the anti-Euro 5-star movement to take power. And he goes on to say Brexit has turned leave into a realistic option in every other European country. And he asks, can the genie of disintegration be put back in the bottle? And he says that the way to do that is by persuading British voters to change their minds. He says the way to do that is not to ignore British voters, but to show genuine respect for democracy. Now, I wonder what that could mean. Well, he goes on to explain. He says the essence of democratic politics is responding to public dissatisfaction with policies and ideas, and then trying to change the judgment of voters. That's how numerous referendum outcomes in France, Ireland, Denmark, the Netherlands, Italy, and Greece have been reversed, even when deeply emotional values such as abortion and divorce were involved. So there we go. We're going to respect democracy by ignoring the will of the people and just bombarding them with propaganda until we can change their minds.
Sounds a good scheme. Well, let's have a look at this, because the cracks in the EU are clearly growing. And of course, we've got announcements now that Catalonia has decided it wants to break away from Spain. Scottish model being quoted here, but it's very interesting to see what's being said. So these are comments by the Catalan Foreign Affairs Minister Paul Romeva, Mayer, if I pronounced that correctly. Members of the Catalan Parliament defied the Spanish government yesterday as they voted 70-11 in favour of creating an independent Catalan state. And this is the quote from the gentleman: "We have always said that we would have preferred a Scottish-type scenario," well, obviously a bit of education required there, "where we could negotiate with the state and hold a coordinated and democratic referendum." And this is the important bit: "We keep talking to Madrid, but all we get back from them is an echo." So very interesting times as we start to see other groups within nation states start to say, well, we can't get any sense out of our government, so the only thing is to go it alone. We've got a breakdown of European nation states now. Is that divide and rule, Mike, or is that a further step towards city regions, do you think?
Well, Catalonia has been, this has been a centre for this type of separatism for a long time. Now, I'm not saying they're wrong in this, but on the other hand, you're absolutely right. We're seeing this breakdown of the nation state into smaller and smaller chunks, this regionalisation. And it does worry me. This goes for Cornwall as well, with the people that are aiming for independence for Cornwall, that this is kind of falling into a trap in some ways.
And of course, it was the EU organisation Fruin that was helping to drive the separatist movement in Cornwall, completely hoodwinked all of the Cornish councillors. And of course, now Cornwall's suddenly panicking because there's no grant money to keep Cornwall going. But we dug into the Catalan situation a little bit, and we're fascinated to come across this. We'll put it up on the screen here. We find a gentleman called Mark Howe, who's part of One Europe, and he'd been writing about Catalonia. This is his background. He's a political anthropologist from the University of Copenhagen, working on political parties, European identity formation, and ethno-regionalism in Europe. You're happy with all that, Mike?
Yeah.
As a former model European representative from Denmark, he has also worked with the Red-Green Alliance in the Danish Parliament. His graduate fieldwork took place over 12 months in Barcelona, where he worked with the separatist party, Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya, and issues of the Catalan independence movement. He's since lived in Berlin, and he's now back in Copenhagen. So very busy boy, but I was particularly interested by the model European representative bit. I'd never heard of it before, so let's go and have a look at that. Well, here we are. And
is that a model European?
That is a model European, gentlemen. He's hair model, European clothes model. And basically, this is school for European politicians. So these are young people who are brought in to simulate the real democratic decision-making process in the European Union. Oxymoron, I know, but that's what they say. So let's have a look at the organisation. I know this is very small print, but we wanted to pop it up. It says the model European Union Strasbourg is supported by a wealth of individuals, organisations, institutions and prominent European leaders. They're very proud of the support those leaders have given, and we're very proud of the support from our network of partners which reach far beyond Europe's borders. So we've got a European organisation which extends beyond those borders, working in Catalonia to help the Catalan people achieve what? Democracy. So let's have a look at those partners. If you're confused about this, the situation politically is designed to confuse people. That's the whole purpose. Here's some of the partners. Well, not all of them. Let's have a look.
So what have we got here?
Most of these, Mike, I don't recognise at all. And as you will see, there are literally so many of them. We have to say, who are these organisations? Who funds them? And what are their true political objectives? But that young man with the strange haircut, unless that's a flat top, I may be a bit dated there, is part of this network of organisations funded by whom? We've no idea. Accountable to whom? We've no idea. What is their political agenda? So this is what the European Union is really about. What you see in Brussels is not the thing that's driving the agenda under the surface.
Spectacular list and some spectacular logos in that, and a lot of them look like they're youth-related organisations. Indeed,
youth-related, and of course the overwhelming view of those logos is very childish, cartoon-like, yes, which I always regard as significant.
Well, yesterday, Theresa May, our new illustrious Prime Minister, was in Italy. There she is with Prime Minister Matteo Renzi in Rome. And doesn't she look fetching? Well, what did she have to say? Well, she once again reinforced the fact that the UK is still a member of the European Union. And she said, of course, as long as we remain in the EU, we will respect the rights and obligations of EU membership. And it's the obligations that are of particular note.
She's truly horrible, this woman, Mike, yes, because the deceit, as we said, the monarch butterflies that flutter out of her mouth with the propaganda is truly astonishing.
Absolutely. And of course, she went on to remind us that TTIP is right at the centre of Britain's policy agenda. I have assured the Italian Prime Minister today that the UK will continue to be a strong voice for international free trade. And what else did she do? Well, she also made the point that EU military integration is right at the heart of Britain's policy agenda, because she said, together we have secured agreement to extend the EU's naval operation to include capacity building of the Libyan Coast Guard, and we hope the training will get underway in September.
Well, my comment on that one is this is fascinating, because yet more information coming into the UK column about the chaotic state of the Royal Navy, massive problems on warships and submarines, equipment not working, manpower not present, particularly highly trained engineers. Certain incidents, they've tried swapping whole crews over because they haven't got enough as a result of private companies coming in for recruitment. So we've got submarines colliding with merchant vessels in the Mediterranean. We've got our latest warships that can't function because the water in the Gulf is too warm, and nobody knew that. But we're apparently now going to go into Libya, which Britain and America have destroyed, and we're going to train their Coast Guard. We don't even have a Coast Guard ourselves.
This is interdependence, Brian.
This is the international military objective of getting seeds of control into these overseas nation states. It's very, very dangerous politics, and it's becoming so obvious as to what's going on. Well, encouraging to see that the Daily Mail has finally picked up on the British Council. And I really invite people to go and have a read of this article, because what they say is so crunchy. They pick up on this lady, Angela Gibbons, who's head of the British Council's Global Property Assets. She's got to struggle a bit because she's only paid $80,000 a year. So obviously, compared to Goddard, she's in the poor bracket. Yeah. But the Mail has gone straight to the heart of this. The organisation receives $150 million from the British public. And this is what the paper says. To this liberal elite, ordinary men and women are an obstacle to progress. A stubborn lot with their own ideas and, annoyingly, not entirely fond of internationalism, multiculturalism, or ever increasing state control. And in fact, much of the article is harder hitting than that. But this is the first time that I've ever seen one of the papers picking up on these quasi-governmental organisations which are becoming so powerful, and indeed, I'm going to use the word subversion, helping to drive subversion in countries overseas.
Yes. Economics to a certain degree, but one area that I've been looking at over the years has been energy production in the United Kingdom. And the main report for this that's released annually is the Digest of UK Energy Statistics, which is called Dukes. Its acronym is Dukes. And this comes from the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And so the new Dukes report is out, and I just thought we would have a look at some of the key points here. First of all, energy production in 2015 rose by 9.6% on 2014. That might seem reasonable. But actually, that is, before we move on to this, the next point is that energy consumption rose by 0.4% because apparently 2015 was a cooler year than 2014. I didn't realize that. I thought 2015 was the warmest it's been for a very long time. That's what we've been told, isn't it?
I'm confused, Mike.
I'm confused. So anyway, the next point is primary energy production is down 58% from its peak in 1999. And I think this is the key. This is the key statistic here, because we've had an 11% increase in population since 1999. And I'm assuming that in these days of gadgetry and televisions on 24 hours a day and all this kind of stuff, that the domestic energy use has not reduced. And since we've got an 11% increase in population in this country, domestic energy use has not reduced. So what has reduced? Industrial energy use, the big ticket energy consumers. And so since 1999, I believe this is a reflection of the complete collapse of Britain's productive capability.
Heavy industry consuming a lot of power.
Yeah. So I think that's the message to be taken out of the 2016 Dukes report, and it's a sad indictment of Britain's government and any suggestion from Britain's government that economically we're doing better than we ever have.
Right, and remarkable that just as Brexit hits the headline, the deal with the French and the Chinese to the contract has been announced for the build of our first nuclear reactor, and apparently we've got to be thrilled about that, because we're now going to have French and presumably the Chinese actually training people in Britain in order to be able to build and run a nuclear reactor, because we've never been able to do that before, Mike.
No, it is ridiculous that we have had some of the top engineering capability in the world, and we've just thrown it all away.
Deliberately destroyed.
Absolutely.
I prefer to say. Standoff.
A standoff in Surrey, yes, because the news this morning is that armed police are in a standoff in Surrey in a small village. There's not really too much information. There's apparently somebody in a house with a gun, and the police have been outside the house since 6 o'clock this morning with a helicopter buzzing around in the sky. But before I show you the Daily Express article, I just wanted to remind everybody this image on screen, of course, is the image, one of the images that we took outside the UK column offices last week, where we had these unidentified gents and ladies with automatic weapons, apparently carrying out a police drill in the building opposite us.
With their beachwear on, basically, jeans. If they'd have had flip-flops, they would have had the complete dress code. But T-shirts, scruffy T-shirts, and the key bit is no identity on them at all, no numbers, no names.
Absolutely. So if we look at the Daily Express article, and you need to go and look at this and look at some of the photographs as we head down the page, we'll find guys dressed in exactly the same way, in casual gear, with bulletproof jackets on, which and very German-looking helmets as well, standing around outside this property in Surrey, and of course unidentifiable because they have no police numbers and no way of identifying them on video, for example. So this is what?
Well, it's interesting, Mike, isn't it? Because, of course, we've had these public announcements that there was going to be some form of ISIS attack in the countryside, in rural areas, predict. And now suddenly there's an incident. And, of course, in people's minds, they're wondering, is it IS? Is it ISIS? Is it Al-Qaeda? Is it Daesh? Is it Al-Nusra? Are there any other people that might have popped into the country uninvited at the moment? Not too sure.
Not too sure.
It's sort of fear-based, think terrorism, but is this actually a terrorist incident? Why are they using all of these incredibly scruffy armed police? Don't know.
Psychological, we could say. But so I want to draw attention to this article from 21st Century Wire by Branko Malic. Fantastic article. Please go and read it. München shooting, terror-embedded journalism. And he starts off by saying there's a certain yawn moment looming about the daily shooter phenomena, provided, of course, that you're not getting shot yourself. It stems from predictability. What independent media dub anomalies does not seem to be so anomalous anymore, because anomalies themselves are apparently inevitable and therefore predictable, even more so than the main line of events mediated by the mass media. We're talking, of course, about the frequent unreliability of media images, ties of perpetrators to some form of security and or intelligence services, unbelievable nature of not so minute details of the story, and so on. And he goes on to talk about the Munich shooting, and particularly the journalist that was apparently putting about the photographs of the Munich shooting, the Richard Goodjar. And of course, this is the same Richard Goodjar that happened to be putting the, let's put his photograph up, happened to be putting out the images of the Nice atrocity in inverted commas.
So that's quite a statistic, isn't it? On one occasion, you're in Germany and you are there on the spot as a terrorist incident happens, and then you just happen to pop across into France and you're on the spot for the next one.
Absolutely. Now, just put that back up again, Theo, please. So the key point, one of the points that he makes here is, of course, Cynthia McKinney pointed this business out with Goodjar, but of course she didn't check whether the photographs that he had put out about the Munich event were actually taken by Goodjar himself. And then she tweeted out, the same Israeli photographer captures Nice and Munich tragedies. How likely is that? Remember the dancing Israelis. And so he's making the point that she didn't check her facts before she put that out. But then he goes on to make the point that although he didn't take those photographs himself, he still mediated them. And moreover, although he's a professional journalist, he didn't act during his working hours. He wasn't during his working time, but in his free time. And he was implying he was a citizen journalist. So that's a bit of sort of disinformation as well. So, and then he ends up by saying the usual slur about conspiracy theorists is that they pathologically abhor accident, i.e. unpredictability of reality. And he says, yet if we observe these series of terror events, at least from the Orlando shooting up to the latest calamity, nothing seems to be accidental anymore, even in the face of the people that are relating these events to us. So go and read this. You've got to understand the points that he's making. I think we've all got to understand those points if we're going to make sense of what's going on around us.
And of course, we ought to also point out that the BBC instantly used the film footage from this gentleman, and that was then pushed out. Trust us with the BBC is factual information without any question. So there's a lot of questions to be asked about these incidents. But what we do seem to see at the moment is that the British government is going to continue to push a fear agenda in order to implement further close down on freedoms in UK and to introduce more armed police or men in T-shirts on British streets. So it's getting dangerous, I think, at this present time. Well, that's it for our news today. As Mike has said, we'll have David Scott on tomorrow, who will give us a more in-depth update on the result of the court judgment for the named person scheme. I'd like to thank everybody who is supporting us at the moment. If you're not already a supporter or subscriber, please consider doing that. We need your help to do what we do. And I will say once again that the Metropolitan Police officer who was brave enough to really take the lid off the cover-up of child abuse by the Metropolitan Police, members of Parliament, local authorities, social services, and indeed some of the charities, that gentleman needs our full public support to ensure that he is not crushed in the system as a whistleblower. And of course, while I say that, Melanie Shaw, as a child abuse whistleblower, is now in her 8th week of imprisonment. And as Mike has said, she's effectively in solitary confinement again. And for some strange reason, she doesn't seem to be receiving mail and she hasn't been able to make any telephone calls out. We still don't know whether she's been sentenced and is in prison or is on some form of remand. But of course, if she's on remand, she should be easily entitled to visits. So something extremely dirty happening around Melanie Shaw. What's the reason? Because she is the evidence of the British state's cover-up of child abuse. We'll end there. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.